Good morning, Who Dat Nation, and a happy week 4 Sunday to our Bayou Blitz family. I hope everybody is doing well out there, staying healthy, staying safe. If you were in the path of, the hurricane this past week, thoughts and prayers out for you. Hope for your continued safety and hope you got through, hopefully mostly unscathed. But we're here to talk about football. And I am Bob Rose. I am one of your co-hosts to your Bayou Blitz pregame show for Sunday week 4 against the Atlanta Falcons. Joining me is Brendan Boylan. Brendan, happy week 4.
Happy week 4. Yeah, I also want to just throw out, just like you did, especially the western part of the state that I'm in, Western North Carolina. Not that anybody in the western part of the state's even watching or listening to this, because most of the western part of the state doesn't have power, cell service, anything. Just keep those people in your thoughts, and prayers. And I mean, I hate using that phrase, but think about them, because a lot of little mountain towns in western North Carolina are gone, just completely gone. So, yeah, just keep those people in your thoughts, absolutely. But we have football to talk about. I also want to give a quick shout out to my buddy Caleb and I showed Bob before we got on, hooking us up with some cool Saints stuff. So, Caleb, if you're watching, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks for all the great goodies and gifts that Bob and I received from you. Week 4 in Atlanta. Gets to renew the rivalry early in the season. We love doing that. All-time series is tied 55-55, so somebody gets the lead in the all-time series today. Bob, if you remember last week, I mentioned that it was a big week in Atlanta, and there were some people in Atlanta calling it the most important game since Mercedes-Benz Stadium had opened.
Yeah.
That was a little dramatic, and we kind of laughed about it last week. I'll throw it out there again, though, this week. It's another big week in Atlanta sports in general, right? The Falcons and the Saints right out the gate. The Atlanta Braves fighting for the final wild card spot. And to put a cherry on top, Arthur Blank just opened a new hospital down there. Opened up today, the owner of the Falcons. So he will be at the opening and then quickly scooting over to Mercedes-Benz Stadium today. There's a lot going on in Atlanta today, and it would be no sweeter than the Saints to come in and, mess up the weekend a little bit. Georgia lost. I know they're not in Atlanta, but I hate to say this to people, but people who live in Atlanta are not Georgia Tech fans. They're Georgia fans.
Right.
Georgia lost yesterday, so the Saints have a chance to really just ruin Atlanta fans' weekends.
Yeah, they really do. And the Saints have, knock on wood, the Saints have owned this series lately. They are 25-11 against the Filthy Birds since 2006. Of course, coinciding with the arrival of Sean Payton and Drew Brees. You mentioned 55-55. A series doesn't get any closer than that. But the Saints have won 9 of their last 13 games over Atlanta, and they are 27-28 when playing at Atlanta. Now, obviously, that spans decades over 3 different stadiums, but they played extremely well in their current dome. I look for them to do so again, but both teams come in with very concerning injuries, and that's why for you folks that are waiting in a live chat, that's why we were a few minutes late coming on, because we were waiting till the official inactive report dropped, and it did. Now, a few key names that people were watching all week are going to be active for the Saints, and that is running back Alvin Kamara, wide receiver Chris Olave. We found that out officially early this morning about Olave. I never had much doubt that Kamara was going to play. It looks like wide receiver Cedric Wilson is also going to give it a go. And it looks like we're going to see the 2024 debut of defensive tackle Kalen Saunders, who was a full practice participant later in the week and is not on today's inactive list. Today's inactive list includes center Eric McCoy, He's on injured reserve, so he's going to be on for at least the next 4 weeks. Cesar Ruiz, not active. Demario Davis, not active. A.T. Perry, not active. Tight end Dallin Hawker, not active. Defensive tackle John Ridgway, not active. The two big names for the Falcons, we talk about the Saints offensive line concerns. Atlanta has that too. They're going to be without right tackle Caleb McGarry and their center, Drew Dahlman. So the Falcons are scurrying, to reshuffle their offensive line, as well as the Saints coming into this one.
And that was one that dates back to their matchup against Kansas City. Very much like the Saints, go down 2 offensive linemen in that matchup. I will say the Falcons' offensive line held up a lot better for them than the Saints' offensive line did when they lost 2 linemen against Philly. Let's move right into that with the offensive linemen down. In years past in this rivalry, especially over, let's say 15, 20 years, really since 2006, this was a rivalry that was built around the quarterbacks, right? Particularly Drew Brees versus Matt Ryan. Saints fans, you may go ahead and sharpen the pitchfork, say what you will about Matt Ryan, but he's a Hall of Fame quarterback according to the numbers. So you did have a very storied rivalry between 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks for a long time. Well, that's kind of shifted lately, right? The Falcons really hadn't found the replacement for Matt Ryan, and you could make the argument still haven't. You don't really know what you got in Penix Jr. because he's not starting for you. For the Saints, we don't need to go through that list. We do it way too much. But I would say the focus has really shifted to the running backs. You have Alvin Kamara, who is a multi-time Pro Bowler, versus Bijan Robinson, a guy that, we talked about on Wednesday, Bob, is arguably, and I don't even think there's an argument, is the highest rated running back in the draft since Ezekiel Elliott. That was the type of recognition he was getting from draft experts and the national media. So without 2 linemen, how does that affect the strategy running the football for both these teams? We'll start with the Saints. They also are without A.T. Perry for yet another week. They do get Taysom Hill back. You have this Alvin, Jamal, potentially Taysom kind of trio in the backfield without your starting center and without Cesar Ruiz. What's the mindset of running the football, and how could they be the most effective with Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill, who have both put up pretty good numbers in their career against Atlanta?
Yeah, they really have. And, I look for the Saints to really push for that to continue today. We know that the Clint Kubiak system is predicated, literally everything that it does is set up by successfully running the football. Now, if you're looking for a bright spot, we mentioned on, Wednesday's broadcast of the Bayou Blitz, that if you're going to be without McCoy and Ruiz, at least you had all week to prepare for it. So as long as you were smart enough, if you were smart enough to settle on your offensive line combination early, that allows that group to establish, some cohesiveness, to establish their lines of communication a little bit better, than what you have, when you just have to shuffle mid-game. And the second positive thing, we expect Lucas Patrick to remain at his left guard spot. With that, and John Hendricks of the Saints News Network and I had, a few discussions last night. We sort of feel like, Shane Lemieux, promoted from the practice squad, probably going to get the start at center. Landon Young going to get the start at right guard. Now, I'm not a believer in Lemieux. I watched him be basically a human turnstile during the preseason. But the fact that you can leave Patrick in at left guard could be significant, because that means that side of your line hasn't changed. You still have Patrick at guard. You still have Talise Fuaga at left tackle. And most of the Saints' success running the football has come on that side of the offensive line. So I do think that you can go into this game with the idea that you're going to try to pound the Falcons over on that side. Try to run your toss plays, your stretch plays. And I think that you should be able to have some reasonable success against the Falcons defense that ranks only 28th against the run. Now, when you try to run downhill, try to run between the tackles at Atlanta, that's when Lemieux, that's when Landon Young, and that's when Patrick also, because he played extremely poorly against Philadelphia. That's when you're going to start to pay attention a little bit. The rushes that start to the left side, but especially with Kamara, who's such a great cutback runner. How's the backside blocking going to hold up? Lemieux, Young, and even Trevor Penning going to be able to seal off that backside, where if the stretch play isn't there all the way, off tackle, where Kamara, Taysom Hill are going to have a lane to cut back in. I don't think it changes the Saints' mindset about we want to run the football, we need to run the football, and we plan on running the football.
I want to hit this real quick. This is a cool comment this morning. It's coming from Caribbean. It's always an argument. How do you say it? But he says, "Hey guys, who dat from Puerto Rico? Would you consider me crazy for benching Olave in favor of Shaheed in fantasy football?" That's an interesting one, right? Because Shaheed has, and we talked about this on Wednesday, when you're dealing with hamstrings or any kind of like tissue injury like that. And I kind of referenced Bob and his long career as a pro volleyball player. Like those are the hardest to kind of judge where you're at, because you can kind of ramp up and get ready, as you're coming back from that injury, but you really don't know where you are until you are at game speed. And what's the one thing we always say is you can't replicate game speed, no matter how hard you try to. I don't think you're entirely crazy. I think it's a very cautious approach. Like Olave still should get his targets. Olave should still get his opportunities. But we're going to find out within the first series or two what kind of percentage Olave is at, right? Is he 80%? Is he closer to 60 or 70%? So no, I would not consider you crazy. Actually, we have seen the numbers on Underdog kind of drop for Olave in receiving yards. He's the higher lower is now set at 59.5, so essentially 60 yards, which I think just about any healthy week for Chris Olave, that's a no-brainer. You're going higher, right? In this case, that's a little more tricky because we don't know. So with that, before we get into let's use this as a unique transition to Fuse 2. We'll do a little fusion right here. So we were talking about Underdog. We were talking about the running game. Let's move to Bijan Robinson, who's going to be without 2 offensive linemen himself. Bijan, all the talent in the world. Is he being used correctly? That is the question that was posed on Wednesday. It's giving me Kyle Pitts vibes, which if you're in some like long-term like keeper fantasy leagues and you've kept Kyle Pitts all these years, that type of vibe and anxiety that I'm talking about. If you're a card collector / investor and you invested in Bijan Robinson and the history of Kyle Pitts, you're also anxiously sitting on some of your investment because will he end up being unleashed or not? So Bijan without 2 offensive linemen, his higher or lower on Underdog is at 76.5 rushing yards. Bob, we saw Saquon tear the Saints up, especially in the second half last week. Bijan's a guy that certainly has that capability. He has that breakaway speed. It's one of the things that make him very unique, similar to Saquon, that unique mix of power and speed. Do you like Bijan for the higher? Do you like him for the lower? And how does the Falcons' game plan with Bijan change without 2 offensive linemen?
Listen, as far as what kind of game plan the Falcons are going to come in with, this is a franchise, and I say it every time. The Atlanta Falcons are brought up to me in a conversation. This is a franchise that to me continues to look like they have no direction. They brought in Zach Robinson, the former Rams quarterback coach, as offensive coordinator, this past year. A move which I like Robinson a lot, but I'm waiting for him to use Bijan more as a receiver, to kind of lean on him more as a runner. Both Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, who I know you're a big fan of too. They are a potent 1-2 punch, but we haven't seen the Falcons even attempt to rely on that running game. Not yet. They're still relying too much on an overrated Kirk Cousins, and an overrated receiving core. Until that changes, any kind of line, higher lower line with Bijan Robinson, I'm going to be a little bit nervous in taking. But remember that the Saints are going into this game without Demario Davis. Pete Werner is an excellent run stopper, but he's at his best between the tackles. Willie Gay, we're both big fans of, Brendan, as far as Gay's athleticism, his sideline to sideline ability. We haven't seen that yet. So I'd look for the Falcons to test that. If I was Zach Robinson and the Atlanta Falcons, I certainly would. Seeing what Saquon Barkley did to this defense last week, 147 yards. Basically, him and Dallas Goedert provided the kill shots, to this defense. I would come at the Saints today with a heavy dose of Bijan Robinson. Now, is that 76.5 rushing yards or total yards?
Rushing. The total yards is 106.5.
You know what? I'd be tempted to go higher on both. Even without Demario, I think the Saints have the personnel to contain Bijan, but coming off of a poor showing last week against a similar back in Saquon Barkley, and now doing so without Demario, I can see Bijan having a fairly big game. That doesn't mean that I'd be picking the Falcons to win if he does. But the Falcons and Zach Robinson would be absolute fools not to lean on Bijan Robinson for this one. So I think I go higher for both of those picks on underdog.
Alvin Kamara's line just got updated because he's active. You want to hear it? Underdog has Alvin Kamara 62.5 rushing yards, higher or lower, or the combo of 94.5 higher or lower. I know where I stand with that. I think I do know where you stand as well. I don't care if Alvin's got a broken rib or not. And then, of course, my favorite one through 4 weeks, which we actually have a winning record on just this one. Maybe not all of them, all of our pickups together, but this one we have a 2-1 record on, and that is the higher for Alvin Kamara receiving yards. It's still just 27.5. I love that. As long as it stays around that 30, I love that every week for Alvin, every single week. So I think we have the gimme pick this week, Bob, which is Patrick Mahomes for just 1 yard, higher than half a yard. So I'm going to go Kamara higher than 27.5. We're going to go Patty Mahomes on the gimme pick, which is higher than 1 total yard. And then we're going to keep it simple. We're just going to do 3. We're going to do 3 this week. We're going to do it live with you guys. So you know that we're not cheating. We actually do this every week, and it has not gone well for Bob and Brendan.
It so has not.
This is the week. This is the week. Okay, do we want to go the higher or lower for any of the Bijan that I threw out there? Or do we want to give props to the only Falcon I've probably ever given props to, and that was Younghoe Koo, for higher than 1.5 field goals?
The New Orleans Saints defense is damn good, but they've allowed teams to move the football on them, especially the last 2 weeks. Philadelphia, should have put a hell of a lot more than 15 points up on the scoreboard. If Philadelphia has a much better offense, even as banged up as they were last week, than what the Atlanta Falcons do. But I think Atlanta can move the football. I'd go higher on the field goal total. I'd also go higher on the Bijan total yards total, because I think that they'll be able to they'll be able to throw the ball to him a little bit more if they want to, if I'm seeing that matchup, Bijan versus Pete Werner in the open field, I'm getting Bijan Robinson in the open field as often as possible. If it's not running off tackle, it's sure as heck going to be through throwing the football.
I'll throw it out there. Do we want to be weird? Because it is, it's not silly season anymore because it is the regular season. Silly season's for the preseason. But do we want to get silly and take both running backs on the higher than their receiving yards? Bijan's at 24.5.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's silly at all. Because with Olave's hamstring, yes, he's going to play. It wouldn't surprise me if he was only used for specific packages, or they limited his usage somehow. So that tells me Rashid Shaheed could be in line for a bigger day. Jawan Johnson, Mr. Invisible Man, maybe shows up. For the first significant time this season, and if Kamara isn't too labored by his rib injury, and hip injury to a lesser extent, then again, Atlanta hasn't been able to stop running backs, whether it's running the football or as receivers. So I think Kamara could have a big day if he's healthy enough to do so.
All right, so right now I have Kamara higher than 27.5 receiving yards. I have Mahomes higher than half of a total yard. That's a tough one. We might, I don't know, man. I'm just kidding. We have Younghoe Koo for higher than 1.5 field goals made. We have Bijan higher than 24.5 receiving yards. Do we like the picks this week?
I like them, but I liked them the previous weeks too. And, we're still sitting here in a poorhouse, so who knows?
That is true. That is true. All right. It has been played. Guys, if you want to join us on Underdog, use our code Bayou Blitz. You will get a give me pick, like we just mentioned, with the Patrick Mahomes higher than half a total yard. You'll also get up to $1,000 in bonus bets. Again, you can go to underdogfantasy.com and just use our promo code Bayou Blitz. Back to real football and not fantasy football. We talked about the running backs. Let's talk about both these defenses. I think both of these defenses have played very well. I think there's a lot of star power in terms of the names on both defenses, particularly the safety position. Tyrann Mathieu, dating back to last year, has a takeaway in 4 consecutive games, which I think is extremely impressive. You also have Justin Simmons and Jesse Bates on the other side. And I think Bates is one of those guys who does not get the recognition that he deserves because of where he plays. Sometimes you just have to be frank about it, but Bates is a hell of a ball player. Bob, when you look at the Falcons defense going up against a Saints offense that struggled mightily a week ago, where can the Saints take advantage of that Falcons defense, then vice versa? What can the Falcons do to frustrate the Saints even further?
Well, I mean, we already mentioned, the fact that the Saints are going to have to run the ball, and we teased as to how we think that they're going to be able to do it. But especially in today's NFL, you have to throw the ball to win. We expressed some doubts about Olave's usage, not availability, but usage. Which if I'm New Orleans, I don't want Derek Carr to hold on to the ball very long. I mean, not with the human turnstile known as Shane Lemieux in the center, and Landon Young, who has essentially been a tackle most of his career, now playing at guard, that expresses some concern to me, or that raises some concern to me about Trevor Penning too. Penning didn't play particularly well last week, and now he's going to be without Ruiz, the veteran Ruiz, on his left, on his inside shoulder, which has been a massive weakness, of Penning as a pass protector, throughout his young career so far. So you need to get rid of the ball quick, if you're Derek Carr and Clint Kubiak. To do that, we mentioned Kamara involved as a receiver. You have to get Jawan Johnson too. Maybe throw some wide receiver screens to Shaheed, quick slants to Cedric Wilson. He is not Michael Thomas when it comes to slants, but he's a capable receiver when doing it. Make those safeties, make Bates, make Simmons creep up, and then take your deep shots. I don't think that they're going to be there early in the game, the deep shots. And Atlanta knows, obviously what the Saints are dealing with on the offensive line too. So I expect them to blitz. Bring extra rushers, Lorenzo Carter off of the edge, certainly Matthew Judon over on probably Penning's side, if I were them, is going to be a handful, along with David Onyemata, and, that monster Grady Jarrett in the center, where we just, highlighted the Saints' major concerns are. So Also, if you're Atlanta, the Saints still need and want to run the football. So taking advantage of that, if I'm Clint Kubiak, I open up the game with a few play actions. Not play actions and deep shots, but play actions and rollouts. Get Carr out of the pocket. Run Jawan Johnson or Taysom on a drag route with him. So that way you have an easy option. If your second and third levels aren't there. So you have to manufacture yardage in the passing game today. Not by getting cute or doing it with mirrors, just by protecting your liability, which is going to be that side of the offensive line today.
And flipping it, the Saints defense has been one of the best in the league. And even last week against Philadelphia, you mentioned Philly was able to move the ball, but it was that bend don't break type of defense. The Saints defense forced takeaways against Atlanta, whom you've already said is not as good on paper as the Philadelphia offense. What are some things that they can do to frustrate Atlanta? I think I know one of your answers, so I'll just throw it out there. We'll see how well I know my co-host of the last 2 years officially, more than 2 years unofficially. Bob, I think what you're going to say is, well, you have one of the most immobile quarterbacks in NFL history. So if you can collapse the pocket, it's not like he's going anywhere. I think that's kind of where you want to go. But also you're going to mention, even though we just took the higher on it, you got to find ways to contain, not stop, a guy like Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, you better believe it. I mean, first of all, like you said, I need to stop the Falcons running game early. But I also need to and want to beat around Kirk Cousins. Throw him around, get rough with him, cause him to sail some passes like we know Kirk will do if that pocket collapses around him. So how do you do those two things? Obviously, you have to win your one-on-one matchups, but don't be afraid. And I don't think the Saints will. Don't be afraid to bring the extra defenders in the box. A blitzer, whether it is in when Kirk drops back to pass, or even run blitzes. Alontae Taylor has been lethal in that role this year, and I expect him to be used in that way again. Willie Gay, use his athleticism. Tell him go get the ball. Make it very simple for Willie. Willie Gay does have a good football IQ, but no need to put that to the test this game. Your IQ guy is going to be Pete Werner. Willie Gay is your Doberman, your German Shepherd, your junkyard dog. You see that ball? Go get it. I think it was in one of the Smokey and the Bandit movies, where Terry Bradshaw, told Joe Green to go tackle that police car, and he just did. That's the kind of role Willie Gay I want to see Willie Gay used in today. You need to make it give Kyle Pitts a difficult release off the line of scrimmage. 396 yards of the Eagles' 460 yards last week came from Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert, and Devonta Smith. 317 of those came from Barkley and Goddard. Well, now you're facing Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts. When Kyle Pitts lines up wide or in the slot, put a cornerback on him. Don't put a safety on him. Definitely don't put a linebacker on him. Put one of your corners on him, because I don't think Atlanta's receiving core is deep enough to make you pay for doing that. When Kyle Pitts is coming off the line, increase the traffic in that area. If I already mentioned that you're bringing extra rushers, stacking the box against Bijan and for extra blitzers, the bodies are going to be there. In that intermediate range. Make it difficult for Kyle Pitts to get an easy release. If you do that, Kirk Cousins is not going to have a hot read, not at least to Kyle Pitts, when he's under pressure. I like the Saints matchup against Drake London. I think either Marshawn Lattimore or Paulson Adebo can shut him down, because that's physical on physical. I will take Lattimore or Adebo in a physical on physical matchup any day. Darnell Mooney presents another problem. He's a kind of shifty slot, slippery guy that the Saints have had trouble with, similar to Devonta Smith. So you have to find a way to keep Mooney from making back-breaking plays like Devonta Smith did last week. If you can do that, and again, a physical press at the line of scrimmage with those smaller guys helps. I think you'll be able to pressure Kirk Cousins. I think that you'll be able to get penetration into the Atlanta backfield. That defensive line, if they win those matchups and get that penetration, they have to finish, something that's been a bit of a problem for that group this year.
I'm glad you brought Mooney up. I liked Mooney throughout his NFL career. I don't think he was used correctly, right? Like going back to Chicago, like I don't think he was utilized the correct way. I don't know if Atlanta's usually actually utilizing him the correct way.
No, but Kirk looks for him though.
Yeah. But he is a guy that can be like a quiet difference maker, right? Because you'll have the one play. I think it was one play in week 2 for Atlanta. He had one catch for 40 yards and a touchdown or something like that. Like those type of guys are needed on teams as much as anybody else. When I look at this one for the Atlanta offense, I look at this game as kind of a show me game for the Saints defensive line. And what I mean by that is like Carl Granderson has had a good start to the season, right? 3 sacks. But Chase Young hasn't recorded a sack. Cam Jordan hasn't recorded a sack. And as good as Brian Bresee has been for New Orleans, we talked about this about somebody. We talked about this about Trevor Penning when it came to, well, you really want to see that step and that leap from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. And in Penning's case, it's a little different because I don't even know if he's still in year 1 with the amount of starts that he's got. But you want to see that jump. And Bresee's been really good. And we both really like what he brings to the table. But we want to start seeing that jump. Yep. Like, can he, especially against an immobile quarterback, can he provide enough pressure through the middle where you're almost getting like a hockey assist on a sack for Granderson or for Jordan or for Chase Young? And Chase Young's got pretty darn close a lot the first 3 weeks of the season. I'm looking for this defensive line for New Orleans to really disrupt Kirk Cousins. And we've talked about this, and Kirk looked really good the last 2 primetime games that he's played. But you know, when you're coming off an injury like Kirk Cousins is, it's still lingering somewhere up here in the back of your mind, right? So if the Saints can get out, rough him up a little bit, like you said, and maybe try to force him to use the little bit of mobility that might be left to try to get out, it's going to get in his head. That's what I'm looking for out of the Saints defense. And when you do things like that, you're throwing off back foots, you're throwing off half rollouts where you might not be fully comfortable. And that's going to allow your playmakers, your Lattimores, your Adebos, your Taylors, your Honey Badgers. That's going to give them opportunities to make plays where they've really succeeded through the first 2 weeks of the season. So that's what I'm looking for out of the Saints defense. Bob, I'm gonna pose this question before we get off. I got 2 questions for you. The first one being, Kamara has, I think, the 4th most red zone rushing attempts in the league to this point. And we kind of talked about it midway through this week, and maybe even our post-game wrap-up last week. And that is, are we getting concerned the amount of touches that he's getting? So with Taysom being back, do you see Taysom Hill finding the end zone today? Or do you at least see more Taysom red zone attempts than we have seen early on in the season? Because even the games that Taysom did play, I felt like we saw less of the Taysom Hill package, if you will, than we had under the Carmichael, last few years of Pete Carmichael's offense. Or is this a game where maybe you try to get Jamal Williams back going, who only had 1 carry last week?
First, assuming Taysom, who's coming off an injury himself, assuming he's healthy, or as close to 100% as a football player can get, I absolutely see a heavier dose of Taysom Hill today. Not just near the goal line, but everywhere. And Taysom has had a fabulous career against the Atlanta Falcons. It's fair to call him a Falcon killer. Just like Cam's the Falcon killer on defense, Taysom is so on offense. And I'm still not concerned with the touches that Kamara is getting, as long as they come in the right way. But now you're talking about a running back who could has a rib injury, could be as serious as broken ribs. We've heard that tease this week. So you have to limit his usage when you can, not at the sacrifice of losing a game. But you have a Taysom Hill, you have a Jamal Williams. If your line, big if today, but if your line establishes inside control, interior control over the Falcons defense, then you can run Jamal Williams in there. Don't run Kamara in there, run Jamal in there. And we know what Taysom can do. So I certainly expect a lot more touches from Taysom Hill today. Would not be surprised to see more touches from Jamal Williams as well.
For Jamal, I think it can only go up. You only have one.
Yeah.
I don't know. Unless he gets 0, that would be a little awkward. All right, last question before we sign off and give our predictions. We mentioned this is one of, if not the best rivalry in the NFL, and how tight it has been, how competitive it has been, and as much bad blood as there is between these fan bases, it is a rivalry that everybody gets excited about, and a rivalry that will last forever and ever and ever. Which means there's been some great moments and some terrible moments for both teams throughout this rivalry. Bob, what is your favorite moment in the Falcons and Saints rivalry? I have a few. So if I get to cheat and name a few, I guess you can as well. It's only fair. But what are some of your favorite moments in this rivalry?
I like you. I have a few. How can you be a fan of the Saints, and not close your eyes and think of the Shy Tuttle stiff arm, or the Marshawn Lattimore butt interception, the Jimmy Graham bending the goalpost on a dunk after a touchdown in Atlanta. Love that one. But my favorite moment was the 2011 Saints, hosting the Falcons on Monday Night Football. Drew Brees breaking a 20-something-year-old single season record by surpassing Dan Marino's single season record for passing yards in a season. Doing so against the Atlanta Falcons, and doing so, the play where he did it was a touchdown pass to Darren Sproles. And, really you could make an argument that, the Saints were winning handily by that point. Maybe shouldn't have been passing the ball. Maybe should have sat some of their starters. Yeah, not Sean Payton, not against the Atlanta Falcons. So yeah, my favorite moment, in general, is that 2011 game, specifically the touchdown pass to Darren Sproles that gave Drew Brees the single season record.
Yeah, it's great. That's our favorite season. Both of us. That's our favorite Saints season. I think the one thing about that one that made it a little bit more special, and I know it was a single season record, not a career record, but for Drew to throw it to a guy that he spent time with in San Diego as well, I think was only fitting. Like a guy who'd been around Drew for a long time. You brought up Shy Tuttle. I was at the Jimmy Graham bending the goalpost game. That was really cool. It was also really cool because nobody knew what the delay was for. Like, they did not make, like, a public, like, address to that. Like, they did not make an announcement of, like, hey, like, we have to fix the goalpost. So we're just sitting there and we're like, wow, this extra point's taking a long time. We check to see if he got out of bounds. Like, what's going on? And then we're like, oh, he bent it. Okay. So that was interesting. I think for me, and there's some recency bias, but the Drew Brees spin move is up there for me.
Yeah.
And
one of the greatest games in a series of great games, too, by the way.
Absolutely. Just to throw salt in the wound, I mean, Jamal Williams' touchdown last year. That'll go down in some Saints lore somewhere. Anybody ever seen a fake kneel down before? I hadn't. I think for me, it's got to be Shy Tuttle. Like, that was awesome. And now, like, Tuttle's not even with the Saints anymore, and I know that he's in Carolina and he's in the division and all that, but I promise you, if that guy ever comes back to New Orleans and is just going out with his family, he's never going to have to pay for anything. Somebody's going to stiff arm the waiter, try to give him a check, and being like, no. He threw a massive stiff arm. I'm throwing a massive stiff arm at you, waiter. I got his meal today. So I'll go with the Shy Tuttle stiff arm. I think that goes down for me as one of my favorites, along with the Jimmy Graham. All right, Bob. Predictions. It's going to be a good one.
It is.
I really do think it is going to be a good one. And it always is, regardless of whether the teams are, regardless of the records. This is always a good game. But this definitely feels like a game where New Orleans needs to bounce back and show not just themselves but the league as well that they do have the offensive firepower that they showed through the first 2 weeks, and that it wasn't just a fluke. So for me, Bob, it's on the road. It's in Atlanta. I'm going to take the Saints 27-21. No, I got to change that. We got to get our field goals in. Hold on.
Right.
Hold on, wait a minute. Quick math.
We got 27-20.
Okay, we'll do that. 27-20. Yep, there we go. Thanks, Bob. We fixed the problem. We're gonna get the higher on Younghoe Koo today. 27-20 in favor of New Orleans.
Listen, this matchup scares me, and it has nothing to do with the Atlanta Falcons. I'm not worried about the Falcons. I'm not worried about playing at the Falcons. That's like a home away from home for the New Orleans Saints over the last decade, really. Worried about the injuries. And there's nothing that you can do about injuries. I get that. But how effective is Olave going to be? How effective is Kamara going to be? How effective is Taysom going to be? How is the defense going to adjust without DeMario? That's where that side of the ball scares me, because you are dealing with Bijan Robinson. But this is a good defense that the Saints have, and I think that they're going to rely on them today, lean on them heavily today. And I think they do have. If you can control Bijan Robinson, I think the Saints will cause a few turnovers from Kirk Cousins. Because I just think that New Orleans secondary, they're going to look for a bounce back performance after some key breakdowns last week. And I think they're going to come in, very aggressively, and very physical. Against Atlanta. I expect this to be a chippy matchup too. Having very little to do with what happened, with the fake kneel down last year. That'll affect some of the veterans that were on the field for both sides. I feel this game, both teams want to play physical football. And when that happens, you have a clashing of the wills. New Orleans is pissed that they lost a winnable game last week. Atlanta is pissed that they lost what they consider to be a winnable game last week. I just think the Saints are a far more talented team, even with the injuries on both sides of the football. Turnovers are good. Turnovers, how each team uses their running backs and tight ends are going to make the difference in this one. And believe it or not, Dennis Allen haters, I like the Saints coaching staff better than I like the Falcons coaching staff. I'm going to take it, New Orleans in a close one. I'm going to go 23. I went 23-17, and then I thought, I have to adjust too. I'm going to take the Saints 23-16 in this one.
Well, there we go. So just -1 for both of us. We took our initial score, we subtracted 1. Hey, look, we got to make it work for us too.
Right.
I do think that they're going to get opportunities to send Younghoe out. It's just going to be how aggressive they want to be. Like if it's a 4th and 1 at the 30, are they going to go for it, or are they just going to trot one of the more accurate kickers in the NFL out? Last one, just a fun one, because it just crossed my mind. If Saunders is going to be active and going to play today, higher or lower than half a snap at fullback? Is he going to get a fullback look in the red zone?
Higher.
You say he gets one?
Yeah, give me a beefy backfield with Taysom Hill, Wildcat quarterback, with Colin Saunders and Adam Prentice. Who's probably going to get the ball, but that's a beefy look.
So what, you run that out of the shotgun with both those guys next to you, run a quarterback sweep or a quarterback power to one side?
Oh, I'm running straight up the gut, and my lead blockers are Saunders and Prentice.
If that happens, go play the lottery. If we see that look, go get a lottery ticket. But all right, guys. Well, Bob and I will be back. We are going to, as always, record our post-game wrap-up. It'll be available first thing Monday morning for your drive into work or however you spend your Monday mornings. That'll be readily available wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You could always, catch it by following us on Twitter at Bayou Blitz Pod. We'll post the link there. Or if you're in any of the affiliated Facebook groups. Bob, you do a much better job of running through that list than I do. So where can they follow you? Where can they follow those Facebook groups? Where can they get added to? And where can everybody keep up with you, me, everything Bayou Blitz related?
Folks, thank you for joining us on the Week 4 Bayou Blitz pregame show. And like Brendan said, make sure you check out our postgame show. Hopefully, one where your hosts are in a good mood. Check that out Monday morning. And this week's weekly broadcast of the Bayou Blitz, we have to move it to Tuesday evening. So your Bayou Blitz, if you want to catch it live, catch it Tuesday evening, 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 o'clock if you're on the East Coast. And to be able to catch that live, you have to be a member of our Bayou Blitz Facebook page or one of our affiliated pages. So if you haven't already done so, make sure you take care of that so you can join in with our live conversation. If you missed the show live, as always, you can catch it after the fact, the next day or later in the week on YouTube, Spotify, or anywhere else you catch your podcast. As far as me personally, you can follow my articles through the Saints News Network, as always, and also on my personal pages, Bob Rose Facebook, at Bobby R 2613 on X Twitter.
X Twitter. That's one of my favorite things to throw out there. Like, I think we need to trademark that somehow.
Yeah.
Because I haven't heard anybody else refer to it as X Twitter but us. For myself, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at BT Boylan. We're going to mention it in the post-game wrap-up, but I'll mention it here too. We have a little bit of an adjusted schedule next week. The Bayou Blitz will air live Tuesday night. We're still trying to figure out a time, but we'll be live Tuesday night opposed to Wednesday. And then you won't hear from Bob or I for a little bit. We won't have a show for that Monday. We will not have a Bayou Blitz for the following Wednesday. We'll be back with a pregame show for week 6. Did I do math right? Did I math good?
Yes. You mathed.
I math. Yes. We made math a verb. We're mastering, like, creating our own dictionary over here. But we will be back for week 6. But again, we will mention that again on the post-game wrap-up. We will be doing our live Bayou Blitz show Tuesday night. So make sure you follow us on X Twitter to get the updates on where you can find us, what time, and of course, jump into those Facebook groups as well. Well, I hope you guys enjoy the 100th and what edition of this?
111th meeting
between these two franchises. I hope we have a post-game extravaganza opposed to a post-game therapy session. But we look forward to seeing you guys then. Hope you guys enjoy the game. And until next time, find some peace, spread love, practice positivity. We'll see you later on the Bayou Blitz.